Hello, hello. Welcome back to Journal Entries. Today, we are talking about why we should stop trying to find or to create more balance in your life. And I almost eye roll at this topic because I think it's over talked about, maybe. But at the same time, I was at a networking event recently. I say that a lot because it's one of my goals and I'm actually following through on it. So go me. I'm patting myself on the back. But at this event, one of the women there asked a different woman, how do you balance it all? How do you work full time and start your side hustle and have a podcast and you're a mom of two kids? That was her question to this other woman. So these two ladies were having this conversation. And in my mind is everything I'm going to share with you today. It's everything I would have said if they were asking me, which they definitely were not. So my whole thing right out of the gate is that balance doesn't exist. And that's the concept that I think a lot of us know and love already. But beyond that, I think that this myth of balance is also about our to do list and how we always think that if we can just finish our to do list and just finish these tasks, then we would at least feel better about ourselves. And I don't think that's true. I think that both of those things are a myth, that balance is not about finishing your tasks, about finishing your to do list. The belief of if I just finish this one more thing and then I'll feel balanced is what is keeping women overworking and trying to do just one more thing. These are the women that they stay at work a little bit later and then it ends up being 30 minutes or an hour, or maybe they work from home and they put their kids to bed and then they're up working at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., just finishing their emails or finishing this one last task because they think if I can just do this and get ahead tonight, tomorrow will be easier. But if you are that person, let me ask you, is it ever easier? No. Something always comes up. Something else is always added to our to-do list, right? And then we kind of kick ourselves because we're like, well, what the heck? I was just up until 9 p.m., 10 p.m. last night, or I missed out on being present during bath time or reading books with my kids or just being present during dinner time because I was thinking about all this other stuff. And here it is, it's back on my plate today. And we're kicking ourselves because we wasted that time when we could have been more present with our family. So, these external achievements of all of those line items on our to do list, they rarely lead to lasting balance. For just a bit, you might be like, woohoo, I crossed it off. Go me. It felt so good to do that. But it doesn't last much longer than that. I think because of two reasons. The first is because we seek satisfaction and validation externally. The first form of external validation, I think, is the physical form of crossing things off that to do list. So, as soon as you cross something off, you often will want to cross something else off. So, your brain is like, well, let me jump to something else instead of fully celebrating how much you've done. Sometimes, if you're like me, we even add something to our to do list, even though we've already done it, just so that we can cross it off and feel like we've accomplished more. And we're seeking that satisfaction and validation and accomplishment. The other part of this is seeking that satisfaction and validation from others telling us that we did a good job. Note, this one is really tricky and sticky. No matter how we feel internally, no matter how proud or good or any of these positive feelings that we can channel ourselves, we won't feel fulfilled if we don't have that final piece of outside validation. This has been ingrained in us since we were young, since we were kids. Especially if you're a mom, we are constantly telling our kids, good job, great job. I loved how you did this. I loved how you did that. That's validation that we love pouring into our kids. And so they get tons of praise. And then as we get older, we get less of it, but you still get it from your partner and potentially other sources, like maybe your parents and friends and whatnot. Coming from a single mom, I did not realize how much validation I got. And I don't think it was overboard by any means. It was literally just, the normal, like, I don't know, you look good today, or great job, or this dinner tasted good, or like small things. Like my previous partner in my marriage was not like above and beyond, like grateful for much, you know what I mean? But I didn't realize how much it was helpful in my psyche until it wasn't here. Being a single mom without having any other adult in the household and literally having to channel and summon my own validation 95% of the time was a huge wake up call. I still remember when my son was 2 years old, I was going through a rough time, and it was a combination of a whole bunch of things. I think of my son co sleeping with me, which I was not a fan of. My son also having tons of meltdowns and it just being hard being a single mom and all of the stuff on top of work and all the responsibilities that we have as moms. And I was having one of my journaling sessions where I realized I basically want validation, not just validation, recognition for all that I do. Through this journal entry, I realized I'm the only one living here that's an adult. Who am I expecting this from? I'm expecting my son to realize how much I do for him, which I literally wrote LOL in my journal. Like, that is comical to ask a 2-year-old to recognize what I do for him. And like, nor should he. That's what you do as a mom. So that's one of the moments where I was like, I need to channel all of this on my own. And when I do receive it externally, because I do from my parents and my friends and my sisters, that's just icing on the cake. We have to train ourselves, single mom or not, to feel pride and accomplishment and skyrocketed self worth and all of these good feelings from within. That outside validation and satisfaction and great job comments, again, that's just icing on the cake, or else we're always living by everyone else's expectations, perspectives, and standards. The second thing is that balance is a mindset, not a completed to do list. You will never feel balanced based on your to do list. And at the same time, the busiest woman, the busiest person who has so much on her to do list, all of the kids in the world, can feel balanced. The thing is that to do lists are never ending. There's always new tasks, or if there's not new tasks, there's new ideas to be put on there. And if your to do list was complete, what would you do? You would fill it with something else. I can't tell you how many moms I work with that say that they are able to create this white space on their calendar, but then they fill it. And that's something that we often work through. There's also the thing about how if it's not a task that you put on your to do list, like you finally did work through everything, then you would write on there, or maybe just mentally add to it, the thought that you should get groceries, or you should walk the dog, or you should read a book, you should shower and then have a cup of tea or something. And even peaceful activities start to feel more stressful. There's so much stress and burnout that comes with always seeking one more task. So you're hopefully starting to see that this whole concept of balance is possible, but it's clearly not based on to do lists and it's not based on other people. It all stems from within. So, here are 3 different tips for you on how to actually start creating and cultivating internal balance, as well as one tip if you are like me and your top sabotage pattern is the hyperachiever. So, the first tip is around mindfulness and self awareness. What I mean by this is simply becoming present in your day to day and slow down during tasks and activities. And what I really want to say here is that doing this does not physically slow you down. A lot of us hyperachievers think that we can't slow down. Look at our list. We have so many things. How could we possibly slow down? So we just keep going. And then in our brains, we get more and more overwhelmed. But I just want to share that when you start to get that feeling of overwhelm or scattered, or, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Or I wish I had less on my to do list, take a deep breath, pause, put your hand on your desk or your heart, wherever you are, and physically feel into the moment. This literal 2-second activity, I guess it slows you down for 2 seconds, but it's not going to change your day whatsoever, but it will change your physical state. I'm even talking slower, I'm noticing, as I'm sharing this. I guess this might make my podcast a few seconds longer, but it won't physically slow you down. It allows your brain and body to be in harmony. And so as you continue through your to-do list, you will feel so much more at peace. The second tip, setting boundaries and realistic expectations. This could be its own entire podcast episode, but the thing I want to share here is finding pride, your own pride, and your own worth in things outside of your achievements. How you carry yourself at work and your relationships, maybe how often you check in on your friends, things like that. Those are things that you can be proud of that are not how much you crossed off your to-do list today. And finding pride and self-worth in saying no. I'm working with one of my clients on this, and I know that she's just not the person to say, nope, I can't do that. Nope, I don't have the capacity. She is the type of person to say, no, I don't have the capacity, but let me point you in the right direction. And so setting that type of realistic expectation and boundary for yourself that feels good. The third tip is practicing gratitude and self compassion. How I like to do this is not by journaling. Surprisingly, I don't do gratitude journaling. That never felt that great to me. It never lasted long for me. What I do is I like to visualize my gratitude instead of writing it down. An example of this that I just love to reflect on is when I go to the farmer's market locally with my mom, because that is something that I missed so much when I didn't live at home. And so, just an example of this is I would close my eyes and I would take a few breaths. I almost said minutes, but honestly, just a couple deep breaths. And I would just visualize myself walking through the farmer's market specifically, like a specific moment. I remember one day I went with my dog Sailor and my mom brought her dog Bodie, and we would just go from, what is it, booth to booth, looking at vegetables and picking some up. And there's this candle place that was there. And I used to get bacon and sausage. That stand isn't there anymore. But I just visualized that day and how warm it was, and my mom's yellow Mini Cooper. And I try to remember, like, what was the smells that were there that day? What was I wearing? What was my mom wearing? And that is what just literally puts a smile on my face thinking about it. And I feel so grateful for having that time with my mom, for getting now to experience them all over again because we do live in the same city. So, visualizing moments that you can be grateful for. And it can be small moments like that. That moment is nothing crazy, it's nothing to write home about, but it can bring you so much peace and calm, even clarity, and just reset the tone for the day. And as promised, if one of your top sabotage patterns is the hyperachiever, here's what you can do. Wherever you find yourself getting overwhelmed by all that you have to do and getting caught up in it, like getting in like that tizzy, that's the word that's coming to my mind, disrupt it by asking the question, how can I detach from the outcome and make the journey more compelling? And I'll give you an example that I have done because this is my third, like my top 3 sabotage pattern. And then I have an example for you. So I've shared this before if you're an avid listener to journal entries, but I used to be inconsistent with recording my podcasts. I've always gotten them up on Tuesdays. However, I used to record them sometimes on Monday, and I'd have to record, edit, put up the show notes, all the things. And I'd be like, because I just waited so long. And I used to be inconsistent with writing my newsletter. Like some weeks I would go maybe a month without writing anything, but then I would go the next month sending out 5 potentially because I would be inspired then. And I realized through strategic journaling that I was just so attached to the outcome. I put so much pressure on the outcome being that someone would click a link in the show notes or click a link in my email and eventually that they would buy something. That pressure made me not want to do it at all or just procrastinate heavily on it. And now I'm enjoying these activities like podcasting and writing my newsletters so much more. And it's because I made the journey more compelling, meaning I focus on my client, my listener. I focus on what they could benefit from, meaning the podcast topic, or I literally think about somebody reading my newsletter and them laughing at the story that I shared. Like most recently, or not most recently, but recently I shared the newsletter of a person that I never should have dated. And I just think of like, who's reading this and laughing today? And I just have so much more fun with it. So maybe for you, it's similar to that, or you could identify an area that you are hyperachieving and ask yourself, how can I enjoy it more versus putting pressure on myself? Maybe it's focusing on your client, like I was just sharing, or it could be something more habit focused, like playing music while working, or taking more breaks throughout the day, or going to happy hour as a reward, or even rewarding yourself with scroll time. I know scrolling your phone gets hate. I'm not on social media much anymore because of it. However, I do think that there's a time and place for it. And I got the tip once that I loved of scrolling is not bad, but just pencil it in so that you have the time for it. So maybe do your work and then pencil in a 5 or 10 minute scroll sesh after that, and then get back to work. So, if I were to give you one step to do today, I would say to catch yourself when you feel busy, that overwhelmed feeling or scattered. You know that feeling. I can sense it. You know, we all feel it. It's that mental chaos feeling. When you start to feel that, catch yourself in that moment. And in that moment, just pause and check in on yourself and bring yourself back to the present moment. Once you're there, you can take a few deep breaths, maybe three. They say 3 deep inhales and exhales is about 10 to 12 seconds. And that will kind of bring you back down, bring your nervous system back to somewhat regulated. And from that place, you can do one of the tips that I shared of either just staying present, and what that might look like is referring to your senses. So, can you touch something so intentionally and acutely, like you're rubbing your pointer finger and your thumbprint together? And your thumb together so that you're trying to feel a fingerprint? Can you gaze at something so intensely that you're really looking at the colors and seeing how vivid you can make them? Can you smell something that you didn't smell before? If you are around people, can you listen to the octave in their voices? So, not just what they're saying, but especially if they're laughing or if they're saying something at all, you can listen to how it's being said. Or you could set a boundary, especially if you're feeling that overwhelmed because somebody just asked you to do something. Maybe you could try visualizing gratitude, or again, you can ask yourself, how can I find more fun in this moment as I pursue this goal? These are all ways that you can start to feel more balanced without changing your to do list, without moving anything else around, without having to delegate anything, even. All of this is internal and it will feel so much lighter. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And furthermore, I hope that you actually give one of these a try. If you do, please let me know. Feel free to email me or send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I will include those links to reach out to me in the show notes. Please do. I love hearing and seeing who actually listens to my podcast. I get stats, so I know that you guys are listening, and I know that I'm getting more and more listeners, which is so exciting. However, I have no clue who it is. So if it's you and you want to say hi, definitely send me a message. I would love to chat with you. As always, if you want to download my free Calm Mind Blueprint that will take what we've talked about today and more of the strategic journaling approach that I've referenced, but apply it to your life, then that link is in the show notes, as well as other ways that we can work together. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good day.